Awesome. We are recording. We are live.
Okay.
Don't swear.
Share your screen, mate.
My turn?
Yeah, share your screen and I'll introduce it.
All right.
Okay, guys. So Luke has kindly come on. I didn't give him much notice for this, but he's come on to talk about his crazy life. I've known Luke, I would say, probably 8 to 10 months now. And I've heard so many stories. He's such a quiet guy, and every so often he'll just drop in a comment of something that he's done that he never speaks about, but it's insane. And I know he's done so much stuff that he's never told me. So he's going to come on here and share some cool things with us. So yeah, this is Luke Nolan, and life is an ultramarathon. Over to you, Luke.
All right, George, thank you so much. Firstly, it's amazing fun to be part of the Inner Fight cult, I call it. I really think it's a cult more than anything else. So yeah, I'm really happy to share with you guys. Firstly, I thought I've basically been procrastinating all week with George. He was asking me for the title. What's the title? What's the title? What's the title? I'll tell you later. I'll tell you tomorrow. I'll tell you tomorrow afternoon. And then finally I singled in on life is an ultramarathon. And so let me give you my perspective of why I think life is an ultramarathon. Because I've run quite a lot of ultramarathons over the years, but it's not something that I started with. So I was definitely not a sporty kid. Running came to me in my mid-20s. As soon as I started participating in this crazy endurance sport, I realized that actually the biggest ultramarathon is life itself. And so that's why I thought that would be a good way to put it in perspective, because, I truly think that every single race out there is, whether it's 5 hours, 10 hours, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 9 days, however long it is, it's only a small segment of your entire life. So that's kind of how I think about ultramarathons. And so what guides you and what guides me? I think that would help give us some perspective. Why do we do these crazy things like run such long distances? And, I've asked myself a lot of times, is it because I want to be in nature, right? Do I run a long distance race because it gets me to places that I've never been otherwise, or that I can get to see things that I would never see otherwise if I was just sitting in a city? I often talk in business, in a different setting about what I call core values. What are the things that drive you? Because in the end, I think that behavior is based on who you are as a person. That's really what matters most. And two of my most fundamental values are passion and positive attitude. And so passion, firstly, this is a slide I took from a deck I have that I use always in the company. It's one of our company values as well. For me, passion is we say we care passionately about what we do. We just love it. It's just I don't know why, but I just love it. And passion often seems slightly cheesy word, but to me, being passionate is about absolutely adoring everything you do. And this dude we were talking about earlier, Steve, said the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it, keep looking. Don't settle, right? And I often say to people in the office, if you don't absolutely love doing this, please go and do something else. And it's the same with ultra running or whatever it is that drives you in your life. If you don't absolutely love the process, then the finish line is never going to be interesting. And the other thing is positive attitude. We talk about core values. Positive attitude is definitely one of my core values. I think it's hard coded in my DNA. But it's not just that. I always say to people, never stop smiling. This is a picture of me kind of halfway. This is 3 days into an ultra marathon, which I'll talk about later. But I think that positive attitude and just being happy and smiling just makes life so much easier. One of the other things that drives me is, of course, adventure. And so after many years of seeking adventure all over the world, I signed up for my first race, which is called the Gobi March. If you haven't heard of the Gobi March is a 250-kilometer race through the desert of China. Sometimes it's in Mongolia, but usually it's in China. A similar format to Marathon des Sables, which a number of you guys have done. And it's, we're talking about 40 to 80 kilometers a day. Now, when I signed up for this race, I had never done any race in my life, not even a 10K or a 5K let alone a marathon. I honestly had to go to a shop to buy running shoes because I didn't have any. I just, I heard about it and I thought, okay, cool. This sounds absolutely awesome. I need to do it. And so first thing I did was pay the race entry fee, like the deposit. And I think like that was, you could say that was the hardest part, right? Because like suddenly I've committed myself. And this is probably like a crazy way to approach life. But my approach with life is always, look, well, let's first sign up. Let's agree to do it. And then we'll figure out how we're going to achieve it. This is a picture from the Gobi March. This is what most people feel like halfway through a race. But, like for me, when I was running the Gobi March, it was just a lot of fun. It was just like, I saw it as like, yeah, I touched earlier on like nature. It brings you into the, one of the most beautiful places. The way I see life is like, this guy, he's having a tough day. We've all had those tough days. I've felt like that many times during the Gobi March. But those two guys, the camaraderie involved in a long distance race is just absolutely awesome. And the guy on the left and the guy on the right are just there smiling, kind of, one guy is slightly teasing him. The other one is just kind of like, just keeping him going. So after the Gobi March, this is like probably 12 years ago, I thought, okay, what do I do next? And back then and probably still today, like maybe the holy grail of ultra running is the UTMB. And so this is like, as you see, this is the start of this famous race, which starts in Chamonix and does a circle of the Mont Blanc. Back then, again, I didn't really, I had run the Gobi March and, in training for it, I had done a few things, but I didn't really know what I was doing, if I'm really honest. But I heard that the UTMB is the most important race, so why not? Let's sign up for it. And UTMB has this sign-up process where you have to qualify and get points. So I spent probably probably a year and a half racing across Asia. I was living in China at the time. I raced in Mongolia, I raced in Hong Kong, I raced in different parts of China, and picked up the points that I needed, and eventually made it to the 2010 edition of the UTMB. Like a fun story I'll share on UTMB is that like that was a really unique year, which leaves me with unfinished business. So what happened was, UTMB normally starts on a Friday evening at 6:30 p.m. It's one of the most epic feelings I've experienced in my entire life. This specific picture that you're looking at of the start, they're playing this unbelievable like epic theme song, like da 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 da, and everyone is just like crying and emotional and excited, and like you start running through this small French mountain town, and everyone is cheering you on, and you just feel like an absolute legend, and you're lining up with Kilian Jornet and Scott Jurek and all these absolute legends. Of course, I was at the back, like thinking, okay, this is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. Anyway, what made that year interesting was about at 1 a.m., we got into checkpoint 3 or checkpoint 4, and everyone was standing around, with a lot of emotion and like loads of opinions flying around. Like, this does not look like a normal checkpoint. So there was an avalanche during the race. So the race had to be stopped, and nobody knew what was going on. So we stood around like all talking and like figuring out what was going to happen next. Eventually they had to stop the race because it was too dangerous to continue. And they told us, okay, wait for news. So we kind of all went back. Everyone made their way back to wherever they were staying. We hung around in the hotel. And then at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., they're like, okay, the race is back on. Come to this meeting point. We're going to bus you to Courmayeur, and you can continue from there. So we went on for there. I think they probably cut out, we never found out exactly how much of the course they cut out. I'm sure people know, but I never found out. I think they must have cut out 30 or 40K of the 167K race. So anyway, there we are, our second start of the race. It was a lot of fun. We kept going, and not being a super experienced ultra runner, I was just like, just trying to get through it. One of the features of a UTMB is, unless you're a really, really fast runner, you're probably going to go through 2 overnights. So I ran all of the Saturday, eventually got to Saturday night, and I would say probably like some point Saturday night, I was like really, really starting to struggle. And I remember so well, like thinking to myself, okay, I'm definitely dropping out of this race. I can't make this. This is just too much. And somehow like every single time I got to the checkpoint, there was like so much atmosphere and so much energy and so much love and so much like friendship. And like, I had some support from one of a close friend of mine who had a crew, but generally like everybody wanted to crew you and everyone was like egging you on. So like, no matter how painful each 10-kilometer section was, like you just jumped into it. And somehow, I don't know, I managed to finish the race. I think one of the highlights for me on the race was on Sunday morning, coming kind of round, you know, one of the final corners where you see the top of the Mont Blanc, the kind of white snow-capped mountain. It was just shimmering in kind of golden sunrise. It was just one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in my life. And anyway, somehow we managed to run all the way to the end. So I say I have unfinished business because I haven't completed the full course, although we did get the official finisher's jersey, which is cool. But yeah, I'm definitely going back to that one at some point. And so I guess the biggest question I asked myself at the end of UTMB is like, okay, well, if I've done, you know, potentially one of the hardest races in the world, what do I do next? I was personally in a time of my life where my business was growing, and I was like, I realized that, okay, it's time to really focus on building the business. So like when I'm not ultra running, I'm building student.com. And I would say like running a startup is maybe one of the most painful things as well, but that's for another day. We're here to talk about endurance sports. We're here to talk about ultra running. And so at some point, you know, like after 5 years of flying around the world, trying to, you know, make student.com into, you know, the most successful thing I could, at some point I started realizing, okay, I'm itchy for another adventure, you know, and what better than another ultra marathon? It's like, it's something that I love. But the first step was to get off the couch. And why do I say get off the couch? Like, you have to keep in mind, like I probably spent 5 years, you know, step by step, getting to the point where I was doing zero exercise. I still liked extreme sports, but I was doing the lazy ones, if you could put it this way. I got into skydiving, which is like, doesn't require any physical energy, but you still get that extreme thrill. And I remember at one point, my skydiving coach said to me, like, dude, get on the scale. Like, you definitely put on weight. Like you need to jump with a different rig. And I just, you know, it kind of crept up on me, but today I'm like, you know, 68, 69 kilos. At that time I was 83 kilos. I can't believe it. I was actually trying to find a picture to show you guys. I will find it at some point for anyone who's interested, but I had a serious belly. And so Shunka said, get off the couch, get a coach, get back in shape. And what do? Let's tackle something difficult. So I first read about what's called the World Marathon Challenge probably about 15 years ago. I read a book called Survival of the Fittest, written by the first guys who ever attempted this. Phenomenal, you know, challenge, I guess. You know, like it's almost ridiculous. I usually don't tell people I've done it because it takes so long to explain how logistically it works and why. You know, so, you know, people will say like, oh yeah, you know, Luke ran 7 marathons one time. Like, yeah, well, small point, they were all in like different cities and actually in different continents. So yeah, I usually don't explain how or why I did this race, but I think everybody who's like logged on to this session probably wants to do this kind of crazy shit as well. So I will walk you through why I did it. Firstly, let's talk about how do you get ready for 300 kilometers in a week. It was just under 300 kilometers to complete the World Marathon Challenge. I did this race at the beginning of 2019. I decided to do it midway through 2017 when I was realizing like, okay, I need to get my shit together. I need to get my ass in shape. And I remember saying to myself in the middle of 2017, you know, after having done basically zero sport for 5 years, I'm like, okay, why don't I set myself a target and run 1,000 kilometers in 2017? But, you know, old habits die hard. You know, I was still enjoying life and traveling too much and having too many parties. And by the end of 2017, I think my 1,000 kilometer target, if I look at Strava, I probably did 250 or 280 maximum. So then I'm like, okay, now I really need to get this thing under order. So by 2018, a close friend of mine in Shanghai and another friend of mine in Sydney both agreed to do this crazy race with me. And so we kind of said to ourselves, well, look, if we need to do 300 kilometers in a week, let's try and get to training where we're doing 150, right? That way we're halfway, and then we'll kind of wing it on the day, or well, wing it on the week, so to speak. And I was lucky enough to like find a way to connect myself to a guy who had actually run the race a few years before. And he said to me, Luke, look, if you have an ultra running background, if you've done a lot of long distance stuff, just do your normal training. Don't overthink this. Just get a lot of miles in. And then the one thing that you need to train for is the ability for legs to keep running after they're tired, right? So in order to simulate a world marathon challenge, you could do like a mini world marathon challenge in half marathons. So basically like what we designed was, together with this guy, we did 5 weekends of world marathon half marathons. So basically what I did was, I did a half marathon on Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning, Sunday night. So basically 1 weekend, 5 half marathons. I did that for 5 weeks in the weeks leading up to the actual event. And I did one of them I was supposed to do, in snow I'll tell you why snow in a sec. But I didn't get the snow one done. So anyway, eventually I find myself in 28th of January 2019 in Table Mountain. If you've been to Cape Town in South Africa, you will have seen this view. And I guess I would say I was ready, and like, who goes for a running race, full of ski gear? Well, I guess you do when you have to run your first race in Antarctica. And obviously 7 continents includes Antarctica. And the guys who host this decide to do it first because of the extreme temperature and the extreme challenge. It's better to do it on fresh legs. And so, here I am, excited as hell. It's on, and we're actually going to Antarctica. An interesting point is, like, when you fly to Antarctica, there is no passport control. It doesn't even necessarily count as a country. So you can either fly from Chile. Typically, people fly from Chile or from South Africa. We flew from Cape Town, and you basically check out of South Africa, and you check back in when you get there. So I'm the biggest daydreamer, and this is like me calm before the storm, like flying into Antarctica. And like, this was the view on our plane. By the way, you're probably wondering why or how you actually can achieve this logistically. You see the little plane there. So basically, like, to organize this race, they get together 40 competitors, or like contestants, or however you want to put it. Probably 40 nutcases is a better description. Together, and they have basically one plane which flies around with you the entire week. So this is like coming into Antarctica on the first day. It was a 767, which is like a kind of older plane that's not used so much. Here I am with kind of joining in on some national pride here for Portugal and Brazil, on the tarmac. And before we knew it, the race was off. And here's the 40 of us starting race day one. A fun story about race day one. I mean, obviously, a marathon is 42 kilometers. They miscounted the distance. So it was actually 45 kilometers, that first race. And anyone who's run a marathon, or actually I think any distance race, knows what mind games are. And so, we were running loops and kind of like calculating in our head, okay, well, if there's 5 loops left, then it seems too much, but 4 loops is probably not enough. And you're kind of like, damn, my Garmin watch is like, is got a mind of its own. Anyway, eventually we managed to finish this beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful races I've run in my life. You can see I'm not even wearing gloves at that point. It was, the reason why they run this race in January is because it's summertime in Antarctica. So even though it was about -5 or 6 degrees, it was relatively cold, warm. Like, by the time you're like, 5 or 6K in, your body is performing really nicely. It's beautiful. I would say, like, the biggest challenge of running on ice is that a lot, different parts of the course were soft snow, which is a bit similar to running on the beach, which is definitely challenging. It's challenging, but it's just like, you're so overawed by this like landscape. I mean, you can see behind this kind of slightly mountainous background, the scale of Antarctica is so vast. There are no buildings, there's no power lines, there's nothing, right? There's I mean, we were specifically where we were doing this race was in Novo, and Novo is a research base that's mostly run by a scientific research base run by Russians and Chileans and Argentinians, collecting data on global warming and on wildlife and so on. So yeah, it was absolutely spectacular. And afterwards, we watched Russian TV in this tiny little place, and I think the best mashed potatoes in my life. I mean, after running a marathon, you're obviously hungry. I will never forget that moment. Now, so another feature of World Marathon Challenge is that the most important thing is the schedule of the plane, right? So, it's not that you do, one race every day. You basically do a race as soon as you land. Now, keep in mind that like with Southern Hemisphere, South Africa, whereas Antarctica was -6, Cape Town was kind of +40, right? So it was like one of the most extreme things. I say day 2 in inverted commas because it was kind of actually the same day. We basically flew to Antarctica, ran that race, and we were back in Cape Town like before we could blink. And suddenly it's a searing summer heat. It was hardcore. Anyway, we just went through it. We definitely felt the heat, but we were still pretty excited about the novelty of running these back-to-back marathons. After Cape Town, we went to Perth. There's no direct flight with that kind of plane. We had to stop on the way in Jakarta to refuel, but we eventually made it to like one of the coolest welcomes ever. This is like the Perth Running Club, who were just all there set up in one of the parks to make us feel super welcome. It was one of the coolest races we did. Like, you know how Aussies are, they're so friendly. And I found my stride, like at some point, like, I don't know if I can say like, excitement is like adrenaline, like just somehow follows you through the race. I eventually made it. As you can see, I found someone else with long hair and a love for bandanas. So we cruised through that, and before we knew it, we were eating the Aussie breakfast. So it was as enjoyable as the mashed potatoes in Antarctica. Now, day 4 was Dubai, and I've been living in Dubai for about 4 years, and so I call it home turf advantage. I would say I was definitely fully charged, and there's the big smile, right? So everybody who's part of Inner Fight knows where I'm standing right now. I'm standing on Track Tuesdays track, and this is before I got to know you guys, but so like that's why I have a special feeling when I'm running Track Tuesdays, because that's where we ran the World Marathon Challenge. So that's the track below us, and I was just so excited about running the Dubai race. It was definitely it was my fastest time. I think I did under 4 hours at probably 350 or 340. Like when you're running 7 days in a row, you're like finishing is the most important thing. But I definitely like went crazy. This is our back row seats on the plane. We're flying now to Madrid. Next to me is another guy called Luke from Sydney, and it was all about recovery. So if you don't know what Normatec is, it's basically inflatable legs that you surround yourself in and try and massage yourself back to some kind of normality. So Madrid was day 5. Again, I'm saying day 5 in inverted commas because it was actually the same day. So keep in mind that as soon as we left Australia, the time zones were going in our favor, as in we were gaining time as we were going west. And so when we got to Dubai and we flew to Madrid, the flight time is actually not that long. It's 5 hours from Dubai to Madrid-ish. But we were gaining 3 hours of time zone difference. So we were basically like Monday morning, I think it was a Monday morning we ran Dubai, and Monday afternoon we were running Madrid. I look like I'm okay there, but I can tell you that I'm suffering here. I'm really suffering. This is, the fatigue was really coming onto me. So we ran this race on the Madrid Formula One racing track. It was a pretty entertaining course, but I think every race has a low point, and that's I think that kind of sums up how I felt. I mean, I honestly was reduced to a walk for big chunks of it. It took me, I think, 5 hours to finish that day. And yeah, I was I was not a happy camper. But you know, friendship is something amazing. The guy next to me in green is an old friend of mine called Dario, who lives in Madrid. And I said, you know, one of the things about World Marathon Challenges, you can always invite your local friends to come run with you. So he came and ran the second half with me, which like picked me up from my pain. And this guy, just to understand how strong the bond of friendship can be, his wife was expecting for their second child. She was literally about to give birth. So the deal was, and I know her very well. She said, Luke, Dario can run with you as long as he's got his AirPods in his ears, and if I go into labor, he's leaving directly to the hospital. And the baby was born like the next day. So funny times, right? What we do. I was like, as I mentioned, like I was, you know, after Madrid, I was really struggling. Like I was, you know, it was a tough ass race. Santiago de Chile is like a long flight, so at least we had a long break. We stopped in Brazil on the way to refuel, and 22 hours later, we finally made it to Santiago. And you know, legs up all the way, swollen as hell. I mean, that's probably like an extra inch of thickness around my feet. Again, the Normatec to try and, you know, like put blood and life back into it. And I think concentration. I mean, if you know me, I'm usually smiling. This is just like concentration just to get through it. When we started the race, I was the only thing I could think of was like, this is going to be painful as hell. And somehow, like bizarrely, I would say like it was, you know, one of the biggest reliefs. Definitely finishing was a huge relief. But yeah, it was super tough. Now, I think let's just say one thing. You can see everything is, all these races are in the dark. Why are they in the dark? I guess two reasons. One was so that we could have the coolest weather possible, as in the you know, lowest temperature. And secondly, we were kind of behind schedule. And so like, yeah, there you go. There's the, you know, absolute like delight that this pain was over. So 75 hours, I think it was over 75 hours of flying. I think we did probably more than that, with a bunch of crazy people. I can tell you, like, you know, I often think that like the crazier the ultra marathon, the more interesting the people that you will meet. For me, that's one of the biggest drivers. Like the youngest guy in of the 40 was a teenager, running with his dad, who had raced something over 300 Ironman, winning 100 of them. There was a woman in her 60s who had done 400 marathons and 200 half marathons. There was a guy in his 70s. It was really cool. Yeah, airplane food never tasted so good. Literally, we were so hungry. Like basically, the rules of this race was like sleep whenever you can and eat anything you can put in front of you. And yeah, after a bunch of stamps, we were finally in Miami. So day 7 in South Beach, I was limping my way to the finish line. It was I would say excruciating pain. There was one of the doctors with us on the race. We had a medical team flying with us, and he had a really thick Irish accent, and you know, he was massaging my calf, like I kind of developed a shin splint in the front, and he was like really digging into it, and it was like so painful. And he looks at me and he's like, look, it's a cunt, you know. He gave me 800 milligrams of Nurofen to start the race, and another 800 milligrams to get me through it. I think I took 1600 milligrams, but eventually we like grinded it out, and we made it to the finish line. These are my two buddies that signed up this crazy challenge with me, and there's the crew at the end of it. The girl in the center with the number 21, by the way, is a girl called Christina who went back the following year to try and beat the world record, and she's currently the world champion at this. So that was pretty fun. I helped pace her in the Dubai leg, which was a lot of fun to see. And so I guess then the next question is, you know, what happens after you run 295 kilometers in 7 continents? There's, you know, I guess the ultimate question that we always ask ourselves is what's next. And, you know, being in Dubai, I spent all summer training in the heat, you know, and the hotter it got, the more I did. But I was kind of suffering, what do I do next? You know, what's more crazy? You know, I want to do something crazier and crazier and crazier. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do an Ironman. Like, that sounds interesting, but maybe so many people have done an Ironman. So what do I do? And I think like, for me, the metaphor is like, there is no finish line because it's never over. For me, it's like, you know, life is just beginning. Like I somehow during the summer, I heard about OCR, and I found out about a gym called Inner Fight, and they told me that one of the guys there had run 30 marathons in 30 days, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sure we can get along. That sounds fun. If you know, what's 7 marathons in 7 days when you can do 30 in 30 days? So I went online and I found out that this a thing called obstacle course racing, and so that's how I found his number and called George up one day about 9 or 10 months ago and said, dude, I need to come and join you guys, because, you know, as Scott Jurek says, you know, this is who we are, this is what we do. I'll stop sharing for a sec. I just wanted to say, like, you know, running ultra marathons, you know, is my life. But you know, life is my life, you know, and I you know, when I think back, like, I often think to myself, like, how could I be so crazy to sign up for a race like the Gobi March, you know, which is actually quite dangerous, and like, and just figure it out along the way. Kind of like, you know, that's, you know, no one asked you to sign up for life. It just, you know, you just got given it. And so, you know, you just figure it out along the way. And so my view is always just like, you know, take whatever challenge you have, and take it, you know, take it with two hands, just jump straight into it. And yeah, I'm just so excited about the road ahead. I mean, yeah, thanks to everybody at Inner Fight. It's just like, as I say, it's a cult, you know, it's like, it's much more than anything else. It's a cult, you know, we're here to like, push the boundaries and like find new limits. And yeah, what else to do than like, than take things to the next level. After the session, I'm definitely going for my MAF run, which is still in Training Peaks. I've also got a grip session, and technically I have a lactate threshold test, which I didn't do on Tuesday. So yeah, like squeeze it in, squeeze as much as you can. That's what I have to say that's what I have. But I see a bunch of questions. George or Rob, do you want me to get into questions, or where do you want to go next?
Luke, just to say, please don't do your math run, then your grip session, and then your lactate threshold test. Like,
Other way around.
You will do it. Okay, cool. So let's go through the questions. So Elias said, did your water bottles not freeze? And that came up when you were talking about being in Antarctica. Yeah, obviously, I know some more crazy stuff you've done, like Kilimanjaro. I know that the bottles freeze there. Did they not freeze when you was in Antarctica?
So I didn't carry bottles. So one of the things, the way that World Marathon is set up is there's all of the races are loops, right? And they're loops because they need, you know, it's only 40 people running, and they need to, you know, there's only one support. There's one aid station, so to speak. So like, it depends on the race, but it could be anywhere from 3 kilometers to 5 kilometer loops. So there's no need to carry any water. So essentially, no, I didn't carry any water bottles, and I just drank at the time. But yeah, the temperature was fine. By the way, the same people organize what's called the North Pole Marathon, which is obviously on the bucket list. North Pole is like much colder than Antarctica. It's 40 degrees. You know, it gets to, well, it's definitely under 20, but it could go as cold as 40 degrees below. And there, yeah, everything freezes. So different kind of thing. You're supposed to wear a face mask. You're not allowed to breathe the air because it can freeze your lungs and stuff like that. But yeah, the summer day that we had in Antarctica was relatively reasonable.
Right. Sounds delightful.
That is mental.
Foster's wants to know, did you wear glasses, different glasses for each event? I noticed that, was it in Antarctica? George says, did you have like love heart glasses or something? Like glasses. Did you wear like different glasses for each event or what? Because even like in the snow, when you're out in Antarctica, because it's so bright, like snowboarders and skiers, they have to wear really, really strong glasses, right? Did you have to wear something like that?
Okay, so about glasses in Antarctica, when the weather gets really cold, you're supposed to wear goggles, not glasses. So I had goggles, but you have to have 2 goggles because essentially like if you sweat, or if and if you breathe into the goggles, then they freeze and then you won't be able to see anything. So what you're supposed to do is you keep one set of goggles at the aid station outside in the ambient air, and it gets chilled a bit, like, you know, when you put a beer glass in the freezer, it gets chilled like that, so it's already kind of like frozen, so that when you put it on, it can't get more frozen, but you'll be able to see it. So that's kind of like your backup. But yeah, so we were relatively lucky that the day was pretty good. The other thing about racing in the summertime of Antarctica is that it's day all day, like there is no night. So at the you know, whatever it was, 3 o'clock in the morning, the sun just went close to the horizon, like you could see it, but it never set. It went down and it dipped and then went back up. Like, I think like I'm kind of you know, I could tell you more about like the range of performance at World Marathon. Like the guy who won it is a guy called Mike Wardian. He's like on the US Olympic team. He did all the races under 3 hours. You know, like I think 2:45 for some of them, like crazy. He was actually trying to set a world record and by the way, if that wasn't enough, he then after the 7 days, he did another 3 to make it 10 and 10, all under 3. So that was like the fastest time. And then you had like this, you know, like there was this guy, you know, in his 70s who was doing, you know, he's finishing them in 6 hours, 6.5 hours, you know, so plenty of walking. Like honestly, 6 or 7 hours, like, you know, out in Antarctica is super cold. So that was like a huge challenge for a lot of people.
I've got a question in regards to that, Lou. You just said, so he's doing 6-7 hours.
Yeah.
You know, you said like the most important thing is like the plane journey. So say like what happens if this guy finishes in sub 3 and then there's a guy like 7 and you said you're all on the same plane? Do you have to just wait for the last guy or what?
Yeah. So basically the time limit was, we were allowed 8 hours at the race venue, right? So that meant that everyone got a chance to complete, which was kind of fair. And like, yeah, the faster you were, the more free time you had to eat and like rest. So basically, as soon as you finished, you were lying down, you were eating, lying down, and falling asleep. I mean, I slept everywhere. I generally sleep quite easily, but I slept everywhere I could. Yeah, and so yeah, again, it's like in any of these kind of races, the longer you take, the less time you have to recover, which is like, you know, added pain. I mean, like, but you know, the camaraderie was unbelievable. Everyone was just there to kind of support each other and like, you know, cheer each other on.
Nice. Okay, another question about the 7 and 7. What do you know what the percentage was of the finishers? Like, did everyone finish or?
Yeah, so I think pretty sure everyone technically finished. One woman had to pull out of one of the races because she had a pretty significant injury, like a really visible injury, but she toughed it out and came back the next day and like, you know, finished the other ones. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like, so when you sign up for the race, like you have to sign up, but you have to, you know, like for stuff like UTMB and Western States or like even London Marathon, it's like a qualifying criteria, right? For this, give you a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is like all trick questions, obviously, but you know what the answer they want, but it's basically like, they do not want any divas. They just want people who are like willing to carry their own suitcases, willing to have airplane delays, don't care about the quality of the food, you know, willing to, you know, so that was like pretty much the most important thing was like, I think this goes for any multi-stage, I know a bunch of you guys have done multi-day races, like, you know, anything which, you know, you're coming back for round 2 is just kind of, I think the longer it is, the more psychological it is. So it kind of obviously attracted a certain type of people. So like everybody who had signed up was like, you know, there to finish no matter what.
True. Okay, cool. Tom Walker wants to know, how did you lose the belly? When's it going to come back?
Like the belly, my God, how did I lose it? I just started running. Like for me, I really love running personally. It's just like, I feel really good at it. You know, I guess everyone has to do the sport that they love. And so that was just the easiest way, just to start to get the kilometers in. And for me, it's like you know, it's like the vicious cycle, you know, has a virtuous circle. It's just like, the more you train, the more you care about what you eat and how often you eat. And the earlier you wake up to train, the easier it is to go to bed early because you're exhausted. So to be honest, it happened relatively naturally. But I just realized, like, man, I need, you know, that the other huge advantage of signing up for a race, by the way, like I was definitely like underqualified for all races I've signed up for. But you know, like the huge benefit is like, you know, when you're kind of scared, right? Because you're like, okay, shit, this is going to be really hard, and I am definitely not ready for this. So you kind of force yourself into training, and I guess that's the benefit of the, you know, the race format. I think whatever the race it is, as long as it's harder than you think you've ever done before. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I did.
Solid.
No diet, by the way. Yeah, no, just like eating normal.
And no drinking, obviously, because you wouldn't dream of doing that. Okay, Mohammed Juma wants to know what motivated you the most during the 7 days.
What motivated me? For me, it's like I've always thought that every race is about experience, like the actual experience of going through it, even like the painful parts. So like for me, it's just having fun. I honestly think like if you're really into this kind of stuff, like I used to joke with people like, honestly, this is like a holiday for me. You know, like I get to travel the world and I hang out with people. So I know it's hard for people who don't run long distances to imagine it as a holiday, but I kind of like I even like, you know, people who knew, I was like, okay, like, yeah, you know, I used to justify it because I was living in China previously, and like most of my team is in China, and the race was actually held over Chinese New Year, and so I was telling people in the team like, oh, I'm doing this World Marathon Challenge thing, but don't worry, it's happening over Chinese New Year. I'm not going to lose so much time. So yeah, but yeah, it was fun. It was just, I think the experience was what motivated me and kept me going.
Nice. Okay, Marcus has asked, what have you learned in ultras that you implement in business?
Yeah, it's a good question, which like I've thought a lot about, because honestly speaking, it's not to like say that ultras are not difficult and marathons are not difficult, because they are. But like, you know, I think honestly, I have experienced far greater pain in real life than in any race, you know, like, you know, not just business, but also personal life. So like, you know, running a business is super challenging, right? Like, you know, it's difficult. There's, you know, things are out of your control. You need to motivate your team. You need to like inspire others to follow you. You know, like you are tired and like your competition is trying to kill you and like all these kind of things. So yeah, you know, I think what I love most about ultra running is that it brings like mental toughness. I'll give an example. I'll give an example because it was Marcus asked this question. Like, so last on Thursday, I didn't even know, but you guys had your coffee session for the endurance team, and I'm doing my morning run that George gave me, and I'm like, I'm almost home. I mean, like literally less than 1K from home. And I see Marcus and Tom running down the beach, and I'm like, hey, and these guys, they're cheering me on. And they're like, oh, we're going to Surf House. Like, what do you feel like? And I'm like, oh man, I was already like running fast to get back home. I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'm going to go with them, you know, like, and I think that's like, and then I tried to keep up, and I was just thinking to myself, okay, I need to stay at their pace. Like, I know I'm tired and I don't really feel like another, you know, I don't feel like running all the way to Surf House, but like, you know, we've got to tough it out. And like, to be totally honest, I kept up with them until maybe 2K out. And I was even saying to myself, like, don't drop. But my heart rate was at that point, I think almost at 180. I was like, I was overheating. I was like, oh, man, this is so painful, but okay, I'm going to have to slow down. I'll see you then there. And there they were with big smiles, like waiting with drinks, and like the whole inner fight crew, like having a side bowl and all that stuff. So yeah, so I think the mental toughness, you know, I know a lot of ultra runners joke that like, you know, ultra running is 90% mental and the other 10% is also mental. I mean, obviously you need to have a base level of fitness. You do. But like after that, like, you know, it's just like when the pain comes, which it will, you know, it's coming in like if you run a marathon, like, you know, it's like after 1 or 2 hours, or let's say after 2 to 3 hours, the legs start to hurt, right? And like, so that never goes away in an ultra. So it's just how you deal with it. You know, how you deal with it is totally optional. Yeah, it's down to yourself.
Nice. Ostas, you got any more questions?
I've got a question. So it's interesting how you've gone now looking into OCR. I just wondered, like, you obviously heard about OCR and you heard about Inner Fight and Marcus and his 30 marathons, but what made you deviate? So, because OCR is traditionally not as long. Well, yeah. Some are, like most of them are quite short, like 10K. All right, 50K, the beast and all that jazz. Yeah. But
We'll find out
What stemmed that change?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The thing was like, I wanted to do something different, and so for example, I've got challenges which are, for me to run more kilometers is not new. Like I've been doing that for years. So for me now, like this week I had to do 200 pull-ups, and like, you know, when I met George, I could do 1 pull-up, maybe 2, but like I was really struggling to do 2 pull-ups, and I had to use the band, and I was not even strong, believe it or not even strong enough to pull the band down over my foot. And this week I did 200 pull-ups. So like, you know, it's just like, you know, it's just like a new challenge. So that's why I chose OCR. Just, it sounded fun. It sounded cool. It's just like, and yeah, I know that the beast is only 50K, but there is the Agogi. And then there's like, I basically, there's also a thing called, so I've got a race, which I've kind of like on my mind for next year, called the World's Highest OCR, which is in the and it's basically going to be a Guinness Book of World Record for the highest altitude OCR. Yeah, the monkey bars.
Where is it, Luke?
It's in Kilimanjaro. Yeah, so it's going to be. But look, I'm also super excited that the fact that Spartan has like decided to put the World Championships in Abu Dhabi is really great for us. And you know, I also feel like endurance is definitely my jam. I just love endurance sports, and you know, that's my core. That's, you know, I've been really lucky. Like I managed to, in my second or third race, I already got on the podium, and I know that I only got on the podium because of my ultra running. You know, like basically everybody beats me on all these obstacles. I had to do 210 burpees in one race, but somehow I catch them up on the running. So that's like a core base. So I'm not giving up endurance, but yeah. But for now, it's OCR is the thing.
I find it really cool how you've chosen something because it's maybe not a strength of yours, and you just go for it because it looks fun. That's wicked.
Yeah.
Luke's going to be doing the Spartan Ultra Beast in Morzine in France in August. It's 50K, 60 obstacles, but 4,500 meters worth of climbing. That's going to be interesting.
That is insane.
So no burpees, no failing obstacles. That's the goal. I told him, I know you can run, but we need to get you doing obstacles. So that's the goal.
Yeah, that and also we're going to have to do a lot of stairs and a lot of shoka to get that altitude, or a lot of lunges.
Lunges for days.
Awesome, guys. If you've got any more questions, drop them in the comments now. Oh, Marcus wants to. I doubt it. It's pretty quick. We'll test that soon.
Get slow-mo. Would be pretty cool.
So yeah, if there's no more questions, guys, then I guess we'll call it at that. But Luke, again, thanks for doing this and coming on. It's been really cool to. I've heard so much about these like snippets of Antarctica, and I know you did World Marathon Challenge, and I can't believe your first race was a 250K race. Like when you said that, me and George are crying, laughing, because like it's so you. But no, mate, it's really awesome. Again, thanks for going on. You got anything else to say, Fosters?
No, just thank you. I think it's just testament to our quote unquote cult that we've got so many interesting people within it who've got wicked stories like that. That's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing.
Pleasure, guys. It's great to be part of the team. Yeah. So here's to many more crazy races. If ever 100%. You need somebody to join you in a race, you know who to call. I'll be a teammate or a support.
Yeah.
Any of those.
Right, thanks, we'll call it that then. Again, thanks, Luke, and I'll speak to you soon.
Cool.
Cheers, guys.
Arrivederci.